In 2007, retired General Wesley Clark made the announcement that the United States intended to attack 7 countries in 5 years. Clark stated that after the 9/11 attacks, there was a policy group in the United States. He then received a classified memo detailing plans to topple governments in Iraq, Lebanon, Libya, Sudan, Somalia, Iran, and Syria. The Obama administration pressed hard for American involvement in the Syrian civil war, but a war-weary public and Congress pushed Obama to the negotiating table. An independent journalist recently asked General Clark directly about his comments on the Pentagon's plans for a war with 7 countries. Here's a clip.
General Wesley Clark, Luke Radowski, WRC. There's one question, if I could just ask you if that's okay. Would that be all right?
Sure.
There's a speech going around right now on the internet where you talked about the upcoming wars in Syria and Libya and Iraq and Afghanistan, saying that people were telling you this was going to happen.
Came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
It's happening now. Is there a follow-up? Is there any information you know or any thoughts on the speech you gave?
No, those were discussions that were being held in the Pentagon a decade ago, reflecting discussions from 1991. And it's a tragedy how it's unfolded.
Seeing it come true, it's unfolding. What does that say to the larger extent of everything?
It says that the United States needs to be a strong force for peace and justice, global cooperation in the world.
Do you have anything else you want to say about that talk or any information you came across? And how do you feel Obama's handling Syria right now?
I'll see you guys.
Now, Clark first stated that the comments date back to discussions held in 1991, but when pressed about Syria, Clark walked away from the interview. The journalist who confronted the retired general is Luke Radowski, and he's the founder of We Are Change, which is a nonpartisan organization dedicated to exposing corruption and is comprised of volunteer journalists from around the globe. Luke Radowski is our guest today on the program to talk to us about General Clark's admission of these war plans and the rise of independent journalism. Welcome to the show, Luke.
Thanks for having me, Gary.
Luke, before we get into the details of your confrontation with General Clark, what do you think that these 7 countries have in common with each other?
I'll bet a lot of money that they don't have a central Federal Reserve banking system. I bet that they're not favorable to the U.S. dollar, and I bet that they're not also favorable to U.S. foreign policy and its strategic relocation, destruction of these countries that works in the hands of the global elite and the New World Orders and all these neocons. This interview is just insane. What Wesley Clark admitted, whether it was by accident or not even thinking about, back in those interviews, was a huge plot to pretty much destroy any country that's going against the U.S. dollar. And you see that plan being unfolded not only under George W. Bush, but under a new presidency with Barack Obama. You've seen him push so hard to get into war with Syria, and it only makes you question, is the president really in charge? Is he really making all the calls that he says he's making when this plan has been laid out years and years before him, and he's pushing so hard that even the American public finally woke up. Even the British Parliament, which never voted to invade a country, voted against it since the 1800s, has voted against it. People have made a stand of it because it was so wild and out there. But you see him pushing this plan that has been laid out in the works for so long, and it just makes you question who's really in charge and who really has all the power.
Now, Luke, why do you think that Wesley Clark would reveal what seems to be damning evidence of a runaway military-industrial complex to the public on Democracy Now! Why would he do that?
I have no idea, but it could have been just being caught off guard and speaking honestly. I mean, when you're not reading from a script or a teleprompter. You speak from the heart. You tell the truth. And there was no teleprompter. He was being asked questions, and he just spoke about something that was extremely powerful and extremely important. And that's why I really wanted to find him. I really wanted a clarification. I really wanted an update, because I really wanted to know if he still is willing to speak about it as publicly as he did before. It was an amazing interview on Democracy Now! He also spoke about it in other videos that you could see online. So it was just fascinating. We could contemplate, but really, I really wanted to know myself, and I asked him, and we really didn't get much of an answer. But because of that non-answer, we got a lot more questions.
So why do you think that Clark walked away from you when you asked him about Syria?
Now, we can only speculate here. A lot of people online are saying that he was possibly told to shut up. A lot of people online are saying that maybe he was threatened in some sort of way. But again, this is only speculation. We don't know for sure. We don't know for 100%. We just know that there's something more to the story than what we're being told. And that's why I really, really wanted a clarification, because there's always all these theories out there. There's all these people speculating out there. But the only real way to find out is to go to the person, bring up a microphone to them, and ask them directly, like we do. And it's just filled with speculations. It's filled with rumors. But you could see there's a lot more going on in Wesley Clark's life than he wishes to share with us.
Now, Luke, when Clark stated the words, when he said policy coup, who were some of the players you think he was talking about?
Again, we could only speculate, but looking back throughout history, there's been major military-industrial complexes. There have been major private interests who have been pushing all these wars. The people who never want war, the elite, the oligarchs, the people who are the most powerful in the world, who collude together all the time, they always do, because it always works out in their benefit. Again, I don't want to get into speculation, but history always tells us it's always the most powerful elite people who push for war, and it's always the people resisting it.
Luke, these plans that were established by the Pentagon were set to be completed over a 5-year period, and the U.S. government, along with its allies, have been fairly successful in reshaping the power structures of Iraq and Libya. But what do you think has prevented the United States from taking over the other countries, especially Iran, and now, of course, there's pushback in Syria? What do you think is causing that?
Well, there's many factors in play, whether it's Russia or China or other countries and their foreign relations coming together and making a stand against the U.S. aggressive foreign policy. There's been social media, which also has been huge. There's been people having small, pockets of resistance in the Senate and Congress standing up to everything. But I really think it's an accumulation of all these factors coming together. I mean, the only reason the war in Syria didn't happen is because the British Parliament backed out. There's people there. There's honest people who didn't want war. Putin made a stand. The American people made a stand. Some representatives in the House and Senate made a stand as well. And I think all these contributing factors really led up to a stop to a lot of this foreign policy. And I think it's really telling that, this was a 5-year plan. Obviously, it didn't work out as Wesley Clark said it would, but it's slowly being pushed towards that direction. What we always learn is, whether it's Bush or Obama, the interests of these global elites are always going to be met. The issues that they want to push will always be pushed, whether it's 5 years or 12 years or even later down the line. We're still going to see this push. It's always a constant back and forth push, but there's so many different factors. There's so many different variables in this equation that it's really hard to pinpoint on one thing. I think it's a whole big collective resistance to this that really prevented this war in Syria and prevented other wars like in Iran.
Luke, we're coming up on a break, and when we come back, I want to talk to you more about the motivations that are driving the United States government to regime change in these 7 countries. I also want to talk with you about the rise of independent media. So we got to take this break. Stay tuned for more. We're talking with investigative journalist Luke Rudkowski right here on WHDT World News.